What if your pain isn't where you think it is? Why standard physiotherapy fails about 30% of patients and what to do about it. Welcome, my name's Nell Mead, and in the next 25 minutes or so, I'm going to show you why your pain might not be coming from where you think it is, and more importantly, what you can do about it. 1.2 million people in the UK take time off work each year due to back, neck and muscle pain, and that's 23% of all working days lost. But here's what's really interesting. While the majority of these cases, probably around 70%, respond well to traditional physiotherapy, that means there's a hidden story in the numbers, because about 30%, that's around 400,000 people each year, they don't get fully better with standard treatment. Their pain often becomes chronic, and they may or may not have to take a lot of time off work, but they aren't living a full and pain-free life. Today, I'd like to introduce you to 4 people who found themselves in that 30%. So first we have Henri, whose kneecaps suddenly started hurting for no apparent reason. Then we have Becca, an international tag rugby player with a 10-year history of foot pain. We have Caroline, an RAF orienteer who lost her title to somebody 20 years younger. And finally, we have Jenny, a lacrosse goalkeeper who was struggling with persistent lower back pain. So what did these 4 people have in common? Well, they didn't respond to normal physiotherapy. So they were all told to accept their limitations. In fact, the hideous phrase that we used to use in the army was that they had failed rehab. So the traditional approach to physiotherapy is called the biomedical approach, and it's relatively simple. If your knee hurts, we look at your knee. We examine the structures, we test the muscles, maybe we do a scan. We massage and stretch it if it's tight. We give you knee exercises if it's weak. And if we see significant structural damage on the MRI scan, we might send you to see a surgeon. Now, for most people, as I say, around 70%, that works brilliantly. But what about the other 30%? Well, let me tell you what happened with our 4 patients when they tried this approach. Henri was given knee exercises, but his knees kept getting worse. Becca's international rugby career was hugely disrupted because she could hardly walk after training sessions and matches. Caroline was told she was just getting older and that it was inevitable that younger orienteers would beat her now. And Jenny's back pain was getting worse, despite her being super diligent with her back exercises. So what was going on? Well, imagine having a light bulb that just keeps blowing. You can keep replacing the bulb, that's treating the symptom, and most of the time that'll work. But sometimes the real problem is in the wiring or the fuse box or the power source. And if that's the issue, then you can replace the bulb as many times as you like, but it'll keep blowing. And in the same way, your knee pain might actually be coming from your foot. Your back pain might be driven by poor biomechanics elsewhere, and what looks like age-related decline might actually be something entirely fixable. That's called regional interdependence, where every part of the circuit is affected by whether other parts are working. And that matters because right now, nearly 400,000 people each year in the UK develop long-term musculoskeletal problems that don't respond to normal biomedical treatment. Many of them are told that they've failed rehabilitation. Some of them end up having unnecessary surgery, and others give up activities they love. And many of them simply accept living with pain as their new normal. But what if there was a way to look at the whole body as an interconnected system, or like a series of interconnected systems, just like the electrical circuit, rather than just looking at your knee when your knee hurts? What if we could identify not just what hurts, but what's driving that issue? And if we could identify it, what if we could treat the cause and not just the symptoms? Now, I've been a physiotherapist for nearly 25 years. I started my career in the British Army, that's me with the arrow, as a young physiotherapy officer, rising eventually to the rank of major. I worked at Headley Court, I set up the physio department at NATO headquarters in Northwood. I went to Iraq as part of 3-3 Field Hospital in 2003, and I ended up as head of physio for British Forces Cyprus, where in addition to my military work, I spent some time with the Cyprus Davis Cup tennis team. The Army also funded my postgraduate studies in sports and exercise medicine. But more importantly, the Army taught me a lot about what does and doesn't work within physiotherapy, because military patients tend to be really disciplined at doing their exercises. In 2014, I developed the Health and Performance Pyramid, which is based on a combination of everything I've learned in my undergraduate and postgraduate studies, and in particular what I learned from 3 pioneering physiotherapists. That's physio to the royal family, Sarah Key, and then Diane Lee and LJ Lee from Vancouver, as well as anatomist Caroline Barrow and chiropractor Perry Nicholson. Their approaches revolutionised the way I treat complex cases. I now run a clinic in central London where I specialise in helping the 30%, the people whose pain hasn't responded to traditional treatment. People like my patients Henri, Becca, Caroline and Jenny, people who've been told they've failed rehabilitation when actually rehabilitation has failed them. I also recently published my first book, How to Be Your Own Physio, which brings together everything I've learned about how the body's systems work together. It's not just about treating symptoms, it's about finding and fixing the true cause of pain. And today I'm going to share with you how this approach can transform your understanding of pain and movement. Because for me, the solution lies in understanding how your body's systems work together. The Health and Performance Pyramid shows us the 4 layers that build on each other to create optimal health and movement. So let's start with my patient Henri. His knees started hurting for no reason. But when I talked to him, it turned out that his girlfriend had been away for 2 weeks, and as a result, because she did all the cooking, he'd basically stopped eating. And once we addressed his nutrition on the foundation layer of the pyramid, his knee pain resolved in just 5 days. You see, this base layer, the foundation layer, is all about your vascular system, getting nutrients in and waste products out at a cellular level. If you get this wrong, nothing else works properly, and I'll talk a bit more about that shortly. In the next layer, we've got Becca, an international tag rugby player with plantar fasciitis, which is pain under the sole of the foot. And in fact, she had it in both feet. Now, traditional biomedical treatment focused on her feet, but the real problem was in her rib cage. So that's in the health layer, which is understanding how your nervous system controls movement and how different parts of your body affect each other. Fix the driver, in her case, her stiff and twisted rib cage, and suddenly her foot pain disappeared. Moving up to the performance layer, we've got Caroline's story. Now, Caroline was an RAF orienteering champion in her mid-40s who lost her title to somebody 20 years younger. So traditionally, we might say, well, you're just getting older, accept it, or try a different sport. But by building the right kind of strength in the right way, Caroline not only reclaimed her title, but absolutely dominated her competition. And finally, Jenny. Jenny's case demonstrates the sport-specific layer at the top because Jenny's back pain was actually driven by her foot biomechanics. So by developing specific cues that Jenny could use in game situations, we not only resolved her pain, but improved her performance. She was a goalkeeper and she started keeping more clean sheets. So what makes this approach different is that it's not just about treating where it hurts. It's about how understanding how your body's systems work together, building from the foundation up. And because of that, we create lasting changes, not just quick fixes. And this approach works because it addresses the cause, not just the symptoms. It looks at your whole body, not just the painful bit. It builds systematic resilience, and it gives you the tools to understand your own body better. And this all really started to come together for me in 2014. So I've been a tennis player all my life. And I was in Croatia, living the dream, training with former Wimbledon champion Goran Ivanisevic, who at the time had just coached Marin Cilic to the US Open title. But before I got there, I was pretty burned out. I'd been moving my clinic, working too hard, not hydrating properly, eating on the run. And despite being a physio who should have probably known better, I wasn't looking after myself brilliantly. But I was a very regular tennis player, so I was trusting that my body would know how to cope, just like it always had. 2 hours into hitting with Goran, disaster struck. I went down and forward to pick up a low volley, and I just kept going, falling towards the clay because my calf muscle didn't catch me, it just gave way. It was a grade 2 tear. I couldn't walk. I could put my finger into the hole in my muscle, and it was a classic calf tear which typically has a 6-week recovery. But after a couple of hours of feeling sorry for myself, which I did take, I realised that I had 2 choices. Choice number 1, I could sulk, I could drink Croatian wine for a week, and I could go home with a nasty injury. Or option 2, I could put my knowledge to the test and see if I could speed up my healing process. So I chose option 2, and while all the others on my group were playing tennis and living it up in the bar afterwards, I was drinking water like a camel that's been in the desert for 6 months. I was eating protein by the bucket load. I was avoiding the alcohol, damn it. I was getting early nights, and I was spending 5 hours a day in the on-site gym, gradually working on calf mobility and loading, and eventually running. And 6 days later, not 6 weeks, I was back on court hitting with Goran. Not going to say I was fully fit, but I was able to play. Now that experience was my wake-up call, because if those principles could work so effectively for me, surely they could help countless other people. So that's when I went back through all my notes, all of them. From my university training, my postgraduate courses, I sought out some more training with pioneering physios, and I tested my new methods with thousands of patients. I developed questionnaires, I refined my techniques, and gradually the health and performance pyramid took shape. So let's have a look at the pyramid in a bit more detail. And we're going to start with the foundation layer. And this, as you can see, has got 4 blocks: hydration, nutrition, sleep, and stress. And this is about your vascular system, the vessels, the arteries, the veins, and the lymphatic vessels. So the way it works is your heart pumps blood around your body. The arterial blood, the fresh blood from your heart, collects oxygen from your lungs and nutrients from your gut, and then it delivers it to your cells like a Tesco delivery. The cells say thank you very much because they're very polite. They take in the groceries and they use them to make energy and do whatever the cell's job is. And then they put the bins out: carbon dioxide, lactic acid, all the metabolic waste. And that's to be collected. And that collected 30% by the veins and 70% by the lymph. Now, the trouble with the lymphatic system, which is, as I say, 70% of your bin men, is that it doesn't have a pump. The heart is pumping the blood round, nothing is pumping the lymph. So the lymphatic system relies on you looking after it, which means hydration, nutrition, sleep, stress management, plus lots of movement and keeping injuries to a minimum to keep it flowing well. Because when this system isn't working properly, your cells can't get nutrients in or waste products out. It's like, imagine if your bin men are on strike, and so the bin bags are piling up outside your front door, and so your grocery deliveries are blocked by all that rubbish. So as I mentioned earlier, the patient that this really helped was Henri, because he'd basically stopped eating when his girlfriend was out of town, and he'd got really scrawny and he'd lost 5 kilos of weight in 2 weeks. So Henri developed knee pain because his quadriceps muscles just wasted away. So his physio homework from me was to eat protein for breakfast, lunch and supper. I think we went for eggs for breakfast and then chicken for lunch and fish for supper, and pretty quickly his knee pain resolved. Let's just do our first practical check. Have a look round and see if you've got a glass or a bottle of water within reach. Because this simple habit, keeping water accessible, is one of the key differences I see between patients who recover really quickly and those who don't. So one simple trick I teach my patients, I call it the red dot method. Put a small red sticker, little red dot, guess what colour mine is, on my computer screen and take a sip of water every time you notice it. So that's the foundation layer. Now let's move up to the health layer. So this is all about understanding your nervous system's response to pain and dysfunction. So the way your muscles should work when you're not in pain is like this. You've got 2 types of muscles: movers and stabilizers. Now the movers, the power muscles, they are the long bulky muscles whose job is to move your torso and limbs. They're full of fast twitch fibers which provide power more than endurance. So like your biceps in your arm or your quads in your legs, they're the ones that help you to carry your shopping bags and sprint for the bus. They're superficial muscles, and they're the ones on the outside of your body. So they're the ones you can see when you stare in the mirror at the gym. And then at the other end of the scale, you've got the postural muscles, the local stabilizers. And these are the tiny little muscles, really deep, right next to the joints, whose job it is to support your ligaments and control your joints so the bones don't shear or slide about when you move. And their job is to make sure that you should always be weight bearing through the middle of your joints where you're really designed for loading. And the little stabilizer muscles, they are full of slow twitch fibers, which are built for endurance. And that means you can keep holding yourself upright and not collapse by lunchtime. Now, the stabilizers also have an interesting property called the feed-forward mechanism, which means it's their job to preempt movement. So just before you lift your arm or your leg using your prime mover muscles, your brain sends a signal to the local stabilizers, telling them to switch on to protect your joints. But when you're in pain, your brain, and specifically a part of your brain called the amygdala, which is the bit that governs your fight or flight response, goes into protection mode. Now, the amygdala is really binary. This is they call it the lizard brain or the chimp brain if you're Steve Peters. And it's really binary. So as far as it's concerned, something is either a problem or not a problem. It can't tell if it's a big problem, a small problem, something in between. It's just a problem or not a problem. It can't tell the difference between a paper cut and a broken neck, but it wants to immobilize the area. That's its job. So your amygdala responds by telling your mover muscles, the big power muscles, to go into spasm. And at the same time, the stabilizers, your little ones, they are inhibited by pain and dysfunction. So the feed-forward mechanism breaks down. Your stabilizers start firing late, if at all, and as a result, your joints are at risk of micro damage from poorly controlled movement patterns. As a result of that, your joints become sort of jammed together rather than stabilized, which is really useful in the early stages if you really have broken your neck and it needs immobilizing, but it's less helpful when your injury isn't actually that severe or if you're at the stage of starting to heal and move. So if you've ever heard the term muscle imbalance, this is effectively what it means. It's muscles behaving in an inharmonious, dysfunctional way, with some of them moving too hard, some of them working too hard, and others getting weak and lazy. And so the health layer is where we restore muscle balance by working on your alignment, biomechanics, and control, the ABCs. By understanding how your body compensates and adapting how you move, we can break this cycle. So think back to the electrical circuit with the light bulb that keeps blowing. So if you are in the 65–70% of people whose problem is the light bulb, so your foot pain really is a foot problem, then if we sort out the ABCs, the alignment, biomechanics, and control for your foot, then you should get better. But if you're somebody whose light bulb keeps blowing because there's an issue with the wiring or the fuse, then sorting out the ABCs for your light bulb, the bit that hurts, doesn't work. And that's called regional interdependence, which essentially means that any one body part can affect or be affected by any other body part. And it's exactly what happened with Becca, the rugby player. Becca's foot pain wasn't responding to foot treatment because her rib cage position was throwing her whole body out of alignment. And once we addressed that rib cage position and mobility, everything changed. So I just want to try a regional interdependence experiment right now. If you can, stand up and have a look down at your feet. And look at which way your toes point naturally. Are they pointing straight forwards? Are they turned out? Are they turned in? Is one of them turned out, one of them turned in? Just have a look. And now I want you to deliberately turn your feet out. So turn them out like a ballet dancer. And as you do that, feel what happens to your knees, your hips, and your lower back. Felt that? Okay. Now turn them in and feel what changes. What's changing now at your hips, your knees, and your lower back? Have you noticed that your body is an interconnected system? You change one thing, you change your foot position, and everything shifts. And that's going back to that electrical circuit. When your light bulb keeps blowing, sometimes the problem is in the wiring or the fuse box. Now, while you're standing up, don't sit down, let's try another experiment. So now, without holding on, if you can, let's see if you can stand on one foot for 30 seconds. Okay, let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. Where did you get up to? Just remember that number. Okay, now we're going to try again, but this time I want you to close your eyes. So standing on one foot, close your eyes and go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, and rest. Okay, well done. Did you feel how much harder it was, the second one? Because that test tells us a lot about your nervous system's ability to control your movement. We've got something like 11 million sensors that tell us where we are in space. And if we take the eyes out, we're taking out something like 10 million of them. So we are left with only the sensors that are in your proprioceptive system, the little receptors that tell your brain where you are in space without your eyes. So that's going to tell us a lot more about your nervous system's ability to control your movement. So there you go, that is a test. So we're moving up now to the performance layer. Now the performance layer is all about building capacity in your musculoskeletal system. So we have the vascular system with the foundation layer, we have the nervous system with the health layer, and now we've got the musculoskeletal system, your bones and muscles. And this is about building capacity. So this is strength, flexibility, and endurance. And this is governed by something called the SAID principle, or the SAID principle, specific adaptation to imposed demand. So in simple terms, your body adapts specifically to whatever you ask it to do. So it's not going to build strength if you ask it to do an endurance exercise. Because this layer's got three key building blocks, which is strength, your muscle's ability to produce force, its flexibility, your capacity to move through full ranges of motion, and its endurance, your ability to sustain activity over time. Now, the proportions of strength, flexibility, and endurance that you need depend entirely on what you want to achieve. So a power lifter, if we think about strength, flexibility, and endurance as 100%, a power lifter might need to focus 90% on strength and only 10% on flexibility, while a gymnast would obviously need much more flexibility. A marathon runner needs high endurance, while a tennis player needs a more balanced blend of all three. But the goal is to have spare capacity for whatever you want to achieve, and that's how you reduce your injury risk. So a couch potato might pull a hamstring running for a bus because they don't have a lot of spare capacity. But equally, we see athletes often getting injured despite having loads of strength, flexibility, and endurance. But that's because they're competing right at the edge of their capacity. They're not just running for a bus. Now, this is what happened with my patient Caroline. Caroline, in her mid-40s, was told that she was too old to compete with the younger orienteers, but that wasn't the real issue, because when we built the very specific kind of strength that Caroline needed for downhill running, so really focusing on very slow step downs and then building up the speed and the range and all the rest of it, Caroline not only reclaimed her title, but dominated her competition, because age was never the issue for Caroline. It was her capacity that was the problem. And then moving further up the pyramid, we put it all together. Vascular system, nervous system, and musculoskeletal capacity. And we add in some sport-specific movements for people who want to. And this was Jenny, my lacrosse goalkeeper, so we were focusing on her squat technique. But the results with my 4 patients speak for themselves. Henri, pain-free in 5 days after months of problems with his knees. Becca, from constant foot pain to peak performance back to her international career. Caroline, from losing her title to absolutely dominating the competition. And Jenny, more clean sheets, goalkeeper, and no more. So I mentioned that I'd written my book, How to Be Your Own Physio, and How to Be Your Own Physio is the book for you if you've tried traditional physiotherapy and it hasn't worked. It's for you if you've started making those old person noises when you get up from a chair. It's for you if living in your body isn't as much fun as it used to be. It's for you if you feel like you should just accept getting older. It's for you if you want to understand your body better and move with more confidence. Now, inside How to Be Your Own Physio, you'll discover the complete health and performance pyramid framework. You'll find some self-assessment techniques for each layer. You'll get a clear explanation of how your body's systems work together. And there's a load of real case studies showing you how to apply the principles. You've got practical exercises and movement cues, and I've included plenty of ways to build a lasting strength and resilience. Now, as I say, the book takes you through the principles, but if you want to go deeper and learn how to apply the principles to your own injuries or niggles, then I've also built an online self-assessment course. And this course takes you deeper into the assessment techniques that I use in my clinic, helping you to identify your own movement patterns and potential underlying cause of your pain, which is known as the driver. And once you've used the self-assessment course to help you find your driver, then that's accompanied by a free rehab course to help you fix the driver and sort out your problem. So here's how to get started. For the book, you head to howtobeyourownphysio.com/book, or you can just use the camera app on your phone and point it at the QR code now. Or if you want to dive straight into the courses, head over to howtobeyourownphysio.com/courses. And that's it. But if you believe in this approach to understanding and treating pain, please help spread the word. So how can you do that? Well, first of all, I'd love it if you could share my book and share my courses with friends of yours who might benefit. I'd love it if you could leave reviews on Amazon or social media using the hashtag #HowToBeYourOwnPhysio. And finally, follow me on social media. Most of the social media, I'm at NellMeadPhysio or at Be Your Own Physio for more tips and insights, because together we can help more people understand their bodies better and live pain-free lives. Thanks for your time.